Hi, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Yeah, this is great. Happy afternoon, Sunday afternoon for us. I guess for all of us. Most of us are in California, and we've got one of our guests that's in Hawaii. So you're actually 3 hours behind, right?
Only two right now because we don't do daylight savings.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Good.
We are one of those states, those few states in the country that realized it's not necessary.
Yeah,
Yay! What a
that's
smart
great.
state. Wow,
Yeah.
I miss it so.
Yeah. But it does make it, half the year we're 3 hours behind and half we're two. So
Yeah.
definitely complicates things.
Well, welcome wherever you're coming from. Um, yeah, and to our audience guests, keep on coming in. We're just gonna let people file in and get officially started in about another minute or two. But thank you. We always appreciate the support and people supporting us virtually these days. And
And Paula, I don't know how long you've been at Book Passage, but it's one of my favorite bookstores and has been, you all have been supporting me since my very first book in, God, I don't know when, like 1997 or something like that.
that's amazing. That's wonderful. Yeah, I've been with Book Passage for about 5 years now.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
so you've been away from the area at least that long, right?
Oh, yes. But I've on every book tour, I've come through Book Passage and had really incredible events and have
Yeah.
really felt a lot of gratitude to the booksellers there and the folks there who've done such an amazing job getting
Yeah.
books out to people, to the readers that I want to connect with. So
Yeah.
it's
It's
great.
definitely our mission. It's our mission, our passion, pre-pandemic, pandemic, post-pandemic.
Yes.
We
And
got
I'm
you covered.
actually, I'm also very originally, I was born in the Bay Area in Bolinas, and
Oh,
I've lived in San Francisco for a few years, uh, about a decade ago. So Book Passage has been a big part of my life as well.
oh,
And you
so today
passed
is
Book
like a
Passage going to
full
a
circle.
Totally. Yeah.
Well, I'm assuming we've got people still coming in, and maybe this would be kind of a good time for us to start. I'll do the introductions, and Whitney, then I'll give it to you so we can get into our wonderful discussion today. I'm so excited about it. Um, so once again, hi everybody to our author, guest, and moderator, but as well as our audience, our customers. I'm Paula Farmer. I'm a buyer and event host at Book Passage. Welcome to our Conversations with Authors. And thank you for supporting us virtually, just as much as you did in person pre-pandemic. And there is a light at the end of the tunnel. We'll get back to those eventually. Nothing like the in-person events, and people love the in-person interaction with authors for sure, and getting those signed books. But in the meantime, I think Book Passage has done a great job to pivot and take advantage of reaching a global audience and actually having authors that maybe wouldn't have taken a national tour. So that's one of the benefits that we appreciate. So 3 weeks into the new year, our events are really going strong, and today is no exception. We have not one, but two very special guests presenting today, Rebecca Walker and Lily Diamond, and an equally impressive moderator, Whitney Leigh Morris. Rebecca is a best-selling editor and cultural critic who has contributed to the global conversation about race, gender, culture, and power for over 2 decades. She is a co-founder of the Third Wave Fund, an organization that supports women and transgender youth working for social justice. Lily Diamond is a writer, educator, and also an advocate working to democratize wellness through storytelling, accessible practices for inner and outer nourishment, and revolutionary acts of self-care. Wow, I want to know more about that in relationship to our earth and human communities. Lily is author of best-selling memoir cookbook Kale and Caramel: Recipes for Body, Heart, and Table. Um, they have joined forces and collaborated with our featured book today, What's Your Story? A Journal for Everyday Transformation. I love the title, the sentiment, especially with all that we've been through individually and collectively in the last year and the challenges that persist. I've worked a little bit with the book, kind of took advantage of having an advanced copy, and I love it. And I appreciate the gentle but truly impactful way and practical ways this workbook kind of guides us into tapping into creativity, activism, self-expression, as well as self-care, now more than ever. To guide this life-affirming discussion is Whitney Leigh Morris, a small space lifestyle consultant based for now in Venice, California, a firm believer that you don't need to live large to live beautifully. Morris uses her blog and Instagram account to share tips and ideas geared towards helping individuals, couples, and families live small but comfortable. So with that, Whitney, take it away.
Thank you so much.
So we're actually going to do things a little bit differently. And Rebecca and I are going to start the conversation. And we've done these events that we've been sharing with people all over the country in a few different ways. In one configuration where our guest acts as more of a moderator, and in another, often in the case where we have a guest like Whitney, who has really demonstrated and exemplified one part of, or many parts of, rewriting her story in the way that we are exploring in our book. Rebecca and I are actually going to spend some time introducing the book and talking a little bit about our connection, the book itself, and then we'll lead into a larger conversation with Whitney about her work and her life and the radical way that she has rewritten the story of home for herself and her family. So hello all, it's so wonderful to be here with you this afternoon.
Yes, we are really thrilled that you decided to take a little bit of time on your Sunday and come hang out with us. We're really, really happy to be sharing our book baby, as we've been calling it, What's Your Story? A Journal for Everyday Evolution, which we co-wrote together, and which is a product of our relationship and the work that we've done from the moment we met 12 years ago, I believe, in the master class, The Art of Memoir, that I was teaching on Maui. And I was teaching that class because I've written, a couple of memoirs, at least at this point. And I was really invested in helping people to give birth to new stories for themselves, to find a new way of understanding who they are and who they want to be in relationship to many different things: their bodies, their minds, their partners, their homes, technology, their mortality. And the master class was really about helping them to write down their old story, usually of some kind of injury or weight that they've been carrying that has been dictating the decisions they're making in their lives, in order to make way for a new story. And Lily and I met in that course, and she was a fantastic student. And we developed, our relationship and the story of our relationship into one of real co-conspirators and co-authors and colleagues and dear friends. And the result of which is this book that we felt was needed, because at the end of every course, people wanted to take something with them. When they left the course, they felt so moved and so transformed that they wanted to have a practice that they could continue when they went home. And we also realized that all the people who couldn't come to the course would benefit. We hoped, people like you, hopefully, who come to the book and um, sort of, find a liberative space to put down the old and envision the new, and to engage your imagination in finding a new way to move through the world. So that's a little bit about how we met and why we're doing this book. And as Lily said, um, the book is divided into many different sections, and one of them is about home. And Whitney, who's here with us, and you've heard a little bit about her work, has done an incredible job of thinking about what home really means and what it needs and how it can be, the story of it can be completely rewritten to serve both one sense of peace and beauty and balance and having a smaller footprint on the environment and really moving us forward in our understanding of what home can be in a way that's more holistic, I would say. So we're going to ask her a bunch of questions about home. But before we do that, I know that Lily wants to say a little bit more, right? But about the book. Do you want to? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I'd love to share, a little bit more about the book, and then also about how Whitney came into my life and into our lives together. So as Rebecca said, the book is divided both into chapters that explore sort of the typical rhythm of a day. Of course, this varies for all of us, but starting from the point of waking up and being with our minds, experiencing our bodies, being in relationship to other people, going to work, interfacing with technology, being outside and in connection with the natural world, with our communities, all the way through to our mortality, and really understanding what it means to see our lives as a kind of narrative that we are participating in, and that we are also choosing not only every day, but really every moment. And so, particularly at this unique cataclysmic moment in history, Rebecca and I have felt so excited to use the hundreds of questions that occupy the pages of this book to help us come together, as a collective and start to really excavate the stories that have brought us to this point and look at how it is we may choose to rewrite those stories, both of who we are in relationship to our communities, to our families, to ourselves, and also, how do we choose to understand ourselves in this moment in relationship to our country, to the world. And our hope, I think, really is that you all find a kind of freedom in the pages of the book that allows you to explore those questions and to start to imagine in spaces that perhaps feel really can feel closed down. The book is also organized thematically. There are 5 themes that are color coded through the book that you can use to explore. And one is creativity and self-expression. There's one color for self-care. There's one for grief, loss, and the work of healing. There's one for spirituality, and there's a final one for activism. And so really, we want people to feel very free when they're moving through the book, to encounter it however, to come at it with whatever is in your heart and mind and body at the moment, and allow it to be a space for you to cultivate a practice of honesty, of a real radical kind of honesty that will allow you to move beyond the stories that you have held over the past many years, and perhaps even, those that your family legacy has passed down to you as well.
Fantastic. And maybe give you a little bit of an example. So to ground it. So in my life, one of the reasons that I came to this work is that in writing my memoirs, realized that I was really saving my life in a way. That my old story, my first memoir is called Black, White, and Jewish, which I actually happen to have right here. I was at Book Passage with this book many, many years ago, but I had carried a story of being fragmented, of being very broken, of having this very complicated identity as a mixed race person, as a daughter of divorce, all of these different things. And it was through the writing process of writing my book that I came to this understanding that I was actually underneath all of the masks of identity, that I could write a story of myself that was about being whole, that was about being unbelievably open to the experiences of others, of being very fluid, of being a citizen of the world, if not the galaxy. And it was a way out of this narrative of brokenness. And I think all of the different pieces that I've ever written have been in some ways making space for new stories. And the same thing is true of the books that I've edited about toxic masculinity, really helping men to write new stories by understanding the ways in which they've been taught how to be men that have been unhealthy, and giving them the space to write about how they want to be as men, occupying the full spectrum of their humanity, So all of this comes out of this kind of understanding. And Lily and I in workshop have worked with people who have been carrying unbelievable stories, Holocaust survivors, people who've dealt with sexual assault, people who've dealt with cancer, people who have dealt with being in a cult, who in various stages of sort of mental manipulation. I feel like we've seen it all. We've heard so many, and that's really making the space to figure out what is the idea that you are holding about yourself, and shooting for that new idea. And that's what this is all about. So our questions are very intense, and I'll just open the book to any page. Do you believe you are addicted to technology? Have you ever tried to change your relationship to technology? What did you do? What happened when you tried to change? And so each section takes you through some questions where you have to really think about, what am I feeling about this thing? Have I tried to change it? Do I need to change it? And of course, we're hoping that as you write in the spaces below, you will work through that. And each chapter has a lovely narrative arc where you start with this sense of entanglement, and you go through the questions and end up in a space of newness, of freshness, of neku, as we call it in Yoruba tradition, of arising from the waters clean and refreshed. So, should we transition to talking to fabulous Whitney?
Yes.
Talk about your relationship with her and then start asking her some of our questions?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually think that I might, well, okay, yeah. So Whitney and I met, I was thinking about this as I was driving today. I think 7 years ago now, which is just wild. And we met through a dear friend, mutual friend of ours from college, and who connected us because she felt that there was just a sort of ripeness for collaboration and a mutual vision of how we related to the world. And as soon as Whitney and I met, we both I don't want to speak for her, so I'll just speak for myself. I instantaneously was completely, first of all, blown away by the way that the very radical way that Whitney had chosen to live, which is in a 420 square, is that the square foot?
Under 400.
Under 400 square foot cottage in Venice, California. But she does not just live there alone. She lives there with 2 beagles and her son, who's a toddler, and her husband, her partner. And they have created this extraordinary life of, designing space to be multi-purpose, multifunctional, and really in alignment with the rhythms of nature, with the demands of the natural world, with the considerations of climate change and environmental degradation that so many of us, that all of us are facing right now. And doing so in an extraordinarily beautiful way. Everything that Whitney touches becomes like the most beautiful natural glory you've ever seen. And so as someone who my work is deeply rooted in connection to the earth, rewilding practices that really deliver us back to a sense of interconnection with the land, and really understanding how our connection to the earth can create and instruct us in forms of self-care that are really a birthright and are available to us at all times. And so my interest and excitement for the way that Whitney was living and the way that that translated so beautifully into her blog and her teaching and now her book, which is an extraordinary resource for all of this. It was just thrilling. And I think that people who encounter Whitney's work feel that same kind of excitement, because it's not often that we see somebody who so fully lives in and embodies a new paradigm. So we're so grateful to have Whitney here with us today to share a little bit about how she began rewriting that story. And so I think, Whitney, my first question for you is just very simply, like, do you remember when it first occurred to you that there could be a different way to live? Like, if you could talk a little bit about, what the sort of standard American way of living and occupying space looks like, what that story is, and how it came to you to think about living in a radically different way.
Well, first off, thank you for your kind words. And I'm truly, truly so excited and honored to be speaking with the two of you in this format today, because I just have such huge respect for the both of you, and just going to try not to fangirl out in this moment. So first and foremost, thank you. And to speak to the realization that we didn't have to, we being my family, but at the time, really my now husband and myself, like the first moment that I realized that we didn't have to follow the prescribed, whatever's dictated to us, through commercialism and through society, was actually long after we moved into this house. We've been in this house for 10 years, and it's always been my full-time office, even prior to COVID. And we actually just fell in love with the space for what it is, and enjoyed using and just using the space for what it is, and just really relishing it. And it was actually outside voices that made us feel like perhaps that was weird, right? It was the outside voices of people saying, how long do you plan to be here? And none of them were mean. None of them were, of course, there's some judgment in there. There's, of course, people are carrying with them their preconceived notions of what you can and can't do as far as home is concerned with them. But it was I never felt judged by anyone. It was just really remarkable how many people stepped through the threshold and asked like what our bandwidth was really for staying in this home. And it was the just accumulation of all of those questions that made me start to analyze what was really so weird about this, and what did we actually need that we didn't have. And that was just a natural line of questions that just happened over the years. And simultaneously, I began sharing views of our home on Instagram when it was newer, and I feel like very unlike what it is now. It was, for both better and worse. So it was just at that time, it was a creative outlet for showing I'm a creative director, and I love creating things that I believe are beautiful, and hopefully with meaning. But at the time, it was really just an outlet just to kind of share this life in this home. And I started getting so many questions about it. And at the same time, I'm working full time, but I was getting all these questions about it, and answering everybody's questions felt really important to me, because it wasn't the attention, it was the fact that clearly so many people found something about this lifestyle interesting, but they couldn't understand how we pulled it off, or how they themselves could take a step into a lifestyle that wasn't the average American lifestyle. As like the average American home, I think, is 2,500 square feet, which is about the size of the home I grew up in. And people just couldn't really conceive of how it was done, and what was I hiding? What am I hiding in the drawers? Like, where's our secret storage unit? And asking all those questions. And I felt like those questions were so important, because they were unearthing something deeper in everybody else. They weren't just, and not that there's anything wrong with just lifestyle questions or just home decor questions, but there was something else to it. And so once I was peeling back those questions and peeling back those layers, and also hearing all the questions of people who physically came into our home, I realized, okay, there's something here that needs to be addressed. There's something that needs to be unpacked. There's something that needs to be studied, and so we kind of have felt like guinea pigs, but not in a bad way, like in voluntary, like if it's voluntary, and it's a joy, but really just putting out into the world how we make this work. And it's not for everybody, and thank God it's not for everyone, because that would be really boring. But what has been so satisfying to me is realizing that at this moment, when there is the intersection of so many different types of crises in the world, and there's so much inequality amongst in people and groups of people, and there's such a huge divide in incomes, and also the climate crisis, that all of those things can and do touch into the home realm, right? They touch into, they're in everything. And so what began as just kind of answering questions and showing people that this could be done and that it wasn't fake, really turned into an exploration of the ways in which a lifestyle like this can potentially even the playing field in different ways and across different subjects. And that's why we continue to do it still, and it's communicated through pretty pictures, but hopefully my intention is that it's also communicated through meaningful words as well.
Mm. How does it feel to live in a small space? Just what is the experience of it? Because I often I always think I would just go nuts, but then I remember when I was traveling in Africa, I said to some of my friends there, I just need to be alone. And they were like, fine, just go sit in that corner. We're fine. You don't need to go somewhere else. Alone is death, and I thought, oh my goodness, this is such a different way of thinking. But so how does it feel for you? Just every day? Does it feed you? And how does that work?
Well, our experience in this particular space is very contextual. It works the way that it does because of our location, in Southern California, where we're situated within our community, where we're situated on the planet. And because of those elements, I don't actually feel like I'm trapped in a small space. So obviously I say the word small space every single day on repeat, because it's my job at this point to discuss it. But I don't actually feel, for the most part, there are exceptions, and I'm happy to talk about those, of course, but I don't actually feel like I'm in a small space, because we have everything that we need right here. And I should also mention that I'm almost 6 feet tall. My husband's over 6 feet tall. Our 4-year-old is tall and very loud, and the beagles are very loud. So there are certainly so many like tangible components that really fill up the house, when it comes to the life within it. But there's just not a lot of crap cluttering up our house. And we feel like we can still navigate and live in a way that, sparks and nurtures creativity and productivity. And, if ever we do feel a little bit crowded, I would say that I don't want to speak for my partner, for my husband, but if we do feel a little crowded, it tends to be more here, right? It tends to be more here. It's not so much because we have under 400 square feet. It's more something else that we feel like we're trying to escape than the actual space itself. Because at the end of the day, you slide the pocket door closed and you have a little space to yourself. But I feel like we're all searching for different kind of space right now, right? So yeah, I don't feel at all claustrophobic. I will admit that the idea of living in an RV or a camper or something like that actually does kind of make me feel claustrophobic. And I think that is in part because I am a giant person. So the idea of stooping around, I feel like I already do that anyway. So I'm not 100% into the tiny living Kool-Aid. I think that everybody has something that, different things that work for them at different periods in their lives as they rewrite their stories, right? But this has worked for us for a long time, and it doesn't feel crowded. And one of the wonderful benefits of it is that it has made us more engaged in our community, because we don't seek all of our entertainment, all of our satisfaction, all of our experiences within our home. We're not trying to pack in a movie theater in our home. We're not trying to pack in a game room in our home. We're not trying to pack in a library in our home. Instead, we look to our community to scratch whatever itch, and also to hopefully, contribute something in return. Obviously, that's been different in COVID, but not entirely. Just like we're all here on Zoom, like those things didn't go away. They've just changed. And so, I mean, we do really miss our library a lot, because in LA they're still not open. So that's our biggest day-to-day, like tiny living, little needle in our side there. But I feel like when we all have entire record collections on our devices and entire libraries at our fingertips, even if you don't like using a digital reader, at the end of the day, it's there if you can't get to your library, if you can't get to the bookstore. And, I think that this is a time where we can make do with remarkably less stuff. So why are our houses getting bigger, especially in an era of climate crisis? And not to make anyone feel bad for having a big home. I don't mean, I just did the actual study of it. Like, what the hell do we need these bigger spaces for when everything is suddenly in here, And I don't want to have my face in the screen all the time. I'm actually really excited to next week go through the more tech related part of the book. But at the same time, I just think, it is a time to rewrite our stories. It is a time to really look at what we need and why we need it. And so tiny living for me or living in a smaller space for me, feels like an opportunity.
Yeah. Yes. I love what you're saying about changing the story about your relationship with your community and not, needing it all to be in-house. And I think that's such an incredible shift in the pattern of, isolation, sort of, hunkering down with your people and being more and more disconnected from your neighbors, from your, all of the people around you, and having communal experiences outside, And I think that, that sort of isolation that we're all going through by hunkering down in our homes is leading to a lot of mental health crises, and leading to this sense of isolation and lack of connectedness, and even lack of connectedness with the earth, because we're not in it as much. We don't even go outside as much because everything is here. I was just seeing that there's some kind of skylight that they've designed that fakes the sun.
Oh, wow.
Have you seen that? So you can get a skylight, and it literally it's on a timer, and the sun will rise and set, and it's not even the real sun. So you can just stay in your house, and
Oh my God.
I mean, and what will that do for us? That story is one of more and more disconnect from the natural world that has created us and sustains us. So I'm struck by that.
Yeah. I would love to hear sort of building on that, because I know that one of the sort of tenets or like principles of the way that you have chosen to live, Whitney, has to do with using outdoor spaces. And I know that another has to do with, you know, for example, like I know anytime you bring something into your home, you make sure that you give away 2 of the objects that are already in your space. Is that correct? I don't want to get that wrong.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. And I
Wow.
know that another one, you know, another sort of tenet is that, you know, a lot of the spaces in that under 400 square feet are multi-purpose. And so I would love if you could share, you know, what you feel are the sort of like core principles that form structure for this way of living that you've spent the past 10 years exploring. And I'm sure that's like infinite. So whatever feels, you know, right or at top of mind now.
Right. Well, first off, one of the sections that I really love in the book, well, there's many, but it's interesting because I feel like the coming home, the home section and the getting outside section, to me they're different, and they can be completely exclusive, but at the same time they're so intertwined, right? Because at this point, I feel like we shouldn't be looking at anything that we buy or use as separate from the earth, because it has its tolls or its benefits in one way or another. So for me, I kind of was flipping back and forth between my responses to those things, and it pertains, you know, directly to the questions that you asked, Lily. But you have a question in here that says, what do you need to create a home, a space where you can thrive, grow, and become? And that question, you know, in you know, our own way, our own frappéd version, is something that we try to think about before we bring anything into the house. You know, do we need it? Do we already own something that could serve the same purpose? Do our neighbors have one that we could borrow? Could we rent it? Were there extractive methods used in creating it? Were there human rights violations when creating it? What's going to happen when we don't need it anymore? Where's it going to live when we do use it in the house? Like, where's it going to live? And we ask ourselves all those questions before we bring something into the house. I mean, not, you know, a box of cereal, but like pretty much everything that we buy. And then initially it was a pain in the ass to go through those questions, because you were so used to, well, not everybody, but so many of us are so used to that kind of point of purchase, or the click of the button online and just getting whatever you want to get. And we made ourselves really stop and think about this. And now it's second nature now. It's you know, it's just a very natural process to go through before we bring anything to the house. But I like to think that's the question that we're trying to answer anytime we buy something. And similarly, you know, as it pertains to the earth, and as it pertains to our community, and as it pertains to privilege, thinking then, if I'm giving something away, how am I doing it in a way that's not just releasing me of the burden of a thing that I purchased that perhaps I shouldn't have purchased, and then cluttering up the earth, or damaging or adding something else to a landfill in a disenfranchised community. So if I'm going to let something go, how do I let it go responsibly in a way that's going to benefit somebody else? And so those questions and those practices, I'm always making mistakes, and I'm always learning, but we take those every day, and we have for years. We take those questions to heart. We take those steps. And again, you know, I think it just shows how much home really overlaps with everything else, so many of the topics in the book. And then when it comes to enjoying the environment, I mean, look, we have a giant cheat in the fact that we live in Southern California. Like today, it was like 79, 80 degrees, which is bananas. And we didn't go out and enjoy it because of COVID, and we're trying to keep our community safe. And it's not working out so great in Los Angeles. But you know, we do try to get outside as much as possible and take our son to the beach in masks on non-weekend, on weekdays. And we really do try to use the outside. We enjoy the outdoors as much as possible. And I think it's not just getting out of the house. Like, we could stay in the house is great. The house has everything we need. We can stay in the house. It's just the joy of it, right? And then the constant reminder that there's something bigger than you out there. And that is really helpful to remember, especially if we're all kind of stuck in our houses in varying degrees right now, that like when we're swilling in us, pacing the same floors and eating the same things and doing the same thing every day. It's just so important, I feel like, to just do something. It sounds so cheesy, but go outside and put your feet in the dirt and be like, this is not about me. Like, this is a much bigger thing. And so that's one of the things that I think is so important about just physically getting outside. And then also just all the scientific research about how quickly people heal if they're exposed to nature. I'm like, when you were talking about, Rebecca, when you're talking about the skylights, I'm like, well, that's ridiculous for the most part. I'm like, but maybe in hospitals,
Right.
and maybe in situations where people can't like move, like, because, you know,
And if they don't have natural light, I mean, you know,
right.
yes, that's absolutely right.
I mean, and there's, I mean, there's so many studies about people remembering things that they'd long forgotten, like good memories, not trauma, not things that were pushed down, things that they just didn't remember, and being able to recall things after having memory issues for years because they were getting involved in nature more, or getting outside more. And I don't mean to make nature sound separate of the way we live. The hope is that it's not, but just for the sake of clarity in my words. And then, same thing with respect to, healing in hospitals and whatnot. And so whenever, especially in times like now where it is stressful for everybody, and obviously to varying degrees, but it's stressful for everyone right now. I just feel like the minute we step outside the door, no matter how wonderful our home is, it just makes you feel healthier. And so that's just something that I think is important for living in a home of any size, but I also think it's what makes this space feel so magical to other people, is because it's filled with windows and doors, despite the fact that it's like this big. And so even when you're inside, you feel like you're outside. And I think that that's basically a form of magic.
Mm. And how does it affect your relationship? Do you have any teachings around, sharing a space with your husband and your child and your new child to be,
Mhm.
just what does it mean to have, do you feel a longing for privacy or separation, or have you gone past that and kind of become one, which is what I believe in on some level, and
Mhm.
able to make shifts in ways that you couldn't if you could just go to another room? You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
how has it evolved your intimacy?
Mhm.
I wonder.
Yeah, I first off, again, like having the climate of Southern California, I have another cheat when it comes to this, and that is that my husband and now business partner Adam is the most easygoing person on the planet. So that is a huge. I have to give him a lot of that credit, because I never want to answer that question without prefacing it with that. Like two me's would probably be a nightmare, but
Right.
he is just he's super rad. He's super easy to get along with. But when it comes to privacy and wanting to be alone, at the end of the day, if I need that, my senior dog and I will go on a walk on the canals if we just kind of need to clear our heads. And similarly, if Adam, I mean, I could probably count on two hands the number of times it's happened in 10 years. And that's neither good or bad. It's just our reality, the times that's happened. But the same thing, it's really, again, when we're swilling in something, whether it's being ecstatic from our engagement, or being super stressed out about having a baby and during the pandemic or something like that, it's just helpful to get out of your own bubble and remember that, like, not everybody's happy in this moment, or not everybody is stressed in this moment, or, just get out of yourself and get out of your own head. And so when we need, separation as a couple, we'll simply just do that, take a walk. And I feel like, again, not to sound like a broken record, but that's magic. Like, it just does something to you, and you come back and you feel better, and you can finish your conversation if that needs to happen, or just, go about your day. So, and I think that as far as navigating a small space with somebody, and I think it's only made us stronger. I don't think that I can't actually imagine. We moved in to this house so soon after we got together that I actually can't imagine living in a bigger space with him and how that might have changed our relationship. But I will say that everything is out on the table when you're in a space this size. And you know, after 10 years of it, I still want to be around him all the time. And I hope that he feels the same about me. And I'm not saying that because it seems like the nice thing to say to like wrap it up, you know, wrap it up in a bow. It's true, you know, the number of times that I look at him or my child in the middle of the day and say, I miss you, because my face is in work. I'm working and he watches our child most of the day. You know, they can be 10 feet away from me, and I legitimately miss them because I have been doing something else all day. So it's interesting because the space hasn't, that space hasn't been a problem. I feel like it's only been this unifier, and I feel like I miss them because I know that they're having all this fun and they're right there, and I can't be with them because I have to get something done for work first. So I mean, I enjoy working, but so anyway, for me, it's only made us, I think it's only made us stronger. My friend Hilton Carter, who has authored 2 books, in his second book, which is called Wild Interiors, which is a beautiful book. He interviewed us for the book and came and shot some imagery for it. And he wrote the most beautiful description that I can't remember verbatim, which is unfortunate because he's so much better with his words than I am with mine. But he wrote something about watching Adam and I navigate the spaces like watching partners in a choreographed dance.
Yeah.
And after reading those words, first off, they made me want to cry, because what a beautiful thing to say that I had never recognized. But then after reading that, I became cognizant of the fact that it's true. And that's something I really value. And even if, you know, when we move, I hope to not lose that, even if, you know, we'll be in a space that's a little bit bigger, not a lot bigger, but a little bit bigger. And I hope to never lose that, because I feel like it is a form of intimacy in and of itself.
Yes. I think that one of the, so, you know, when we talk about relationships in the book, and we're going to talk about a little bit more about the book, but I know Lily has a couple of really important questions to ask, but I just want to riff on that a little bit, what you're saying. I think that one of the things that I really believe, and one of the things that I hope people get to when they start to answer questions about relationships in the book, is, you know, that when you really join with someone, you know, one story of joining with someone, of being in a relationship, one story can be that that you are so interdependent, that there is no, I mean, there's, oh, you know, if you're not in a codependent abusive relationship, there, you know, there's a healthy way of being intimate and together that is more cognizant that if, you know, this saying in Buddhism, you are my other me, you know, that you are my other me. So we both have to be happy in this. Your happiness is my happiness. You know, your upset is my upset. So we need to work together to really resolve issues in such a way that we both are at a state of equanimity with each other. And it's not about sort of you know, this I dynamic, you know. And I think that I would imagine a small space would force one or two to kind of get to that more quickly, because there is no escape. So you have to sort of dissolve some of this ego I fixation in the name of the peace of the us. You know what I mean? Because you can't go anywhere. I mean, you can go somewhere. We know you. It's not about being trapped. I'm totally
right. No, but absolutely.
But you know, there's something I think that could accelerate that, you know, in the space. Okay, Lily, sorry.
Well, no, I think that some to reflect a story that I heard emerging as Whitney was speaking earlier, and then in what you're reflecting right now. And this is really, you know, getting to the core of what we hope the book accomplishes, which is it allows you, you know, to look into the story that you are writing every day, every moment, about all these different areas of your life, and ask, is this a story that I want to be telling?
Yeah.
But first, what even is the story that I am telling? And I think it's so much of what I hear you sharing, Whitney, is about moving from a story of a kind of real, like, narrow-minded myopia, where we are I'm just functioning for myself. I'm making choices for myself without considering the impact that those choices will have on the people around me, the environment, the lived space that I'm in, my community, the earth. I mean, all of these elements, to a completely different story that is about every choice that I make is going to be a part of this larger ecosystem of understanding my interconnectedness with all beings, with all things, with all elements of the earth, with, you know, all communities, that I can't make a single choice really, certainly not as a consumer, as a participant in our, you know, hyper-capitalist endeavor that we are now all integrated into in one form or another, without radically impacting everyone and everything around me. And that is a sort of astonishing story, new story to tell, to try on. And I think for many of us, it can feel really uncomfortable to take on a level of accountability that is that real,
Right.
quite frankly.
Right.
And yeah, so as Rebecca said, just getting back to, again, this idea of, you know, the book allowing us to rewrite the stories that we are telling. You are deeply in the process of rewriting this story of home, not just as we've heard, but also in these coming weeks. I'll let you share, but things are changing for you. And I would love to hear, before we go into taking audience questions, because I know we just have 10 minutes left, but would love to hear what this new story sounds like for you in 2021 and beyond.
And I'm excited to tackle the book twice, actually, like, you know, in the process, I'm in the process of doing it now, but then also maybe in 6 months or a year to do it again, to see like how this has evolved. But yeah, as I've mentioned, we've been in this home for 10 years, and we knew for the last about 2 years that we wanted to move, not because of the home and not because of the neighborhood, but really for financial reasons. Like, you know, I run my own small business, and I have done so for a really long time. And I don't want to have to keep earning more and more and more in order to keep my family in, you know, and at the bare minimum. I want to be able to spend more time with them. So I can't change how much income I continue to bring in, but I can change, you know, the cost of living by relocating. So we knew that we've known for a long time that we wanted to relocate, but we took our time and traveled around pre-COVID to explore towns that seemed like a good fit for us, or, you know, and what we ultimately settled on or decided upon was to, it sounds random, but it's actually not, but was to co-purchase a small, it's under 800 square feet, farmhouse in the south of France, in a village that I've worked in for about 15 years. And we have purchased it with two of my lifelong friends with whom I have lived and worked in the past, and lived in this village as well in the past. And one of the women was literally in the birthing room helping me birth my son, and you know, married us on the stoop of our front house. She was our officiant, and we have a long history with these two women. And so we purchased this house with them because I feel like I just feel like living more, sharing resources is so important right now, and is only going to continue to be important and more important. And this is an opportunity to do so. We can have this farmhouse. We will be there more often than they will be there, I think, because they have a firm foothold here. It's not a vacation home. They'd be there for long chunks of time. But the idea of buying a home that we can all share, or we can live in separately, depending on everyone's individual stories at the time, is a great way for us to all do something that we're interested in and we love, but also not have one of everything for ourselves. And it makes the story so much more interesting to me, because being in that village, the idea of what brings me joy about it beyond the natural landscape of it is the people with whom I've experienced that village in the past. and it's those two women and their families. So we're so excited to do that. And then the flip side of that, because we are expecting our second child in a few months, and also we can't really get over there because COVID at this time. We're now moving to where my parents live in North Central Florida and building a small ADU on their property and really doing, exploring multi-generational living, which I feel like is a thing that is weirdly frowned upon in America. And I'm so excited to dive into why that is and why there's a stigma about it, because I personally am so excited about it. And I know that so many people in countries all over the world do it out of choice or necessity. And I'm very interested in diving into that and sharing that experience with my family and with our community, bringing our community along to experience it with us.
Fantastic, beautiful. We don't have a lot of time, and we're getting some really great questions. So I want to segue to the folks who are asking all three of us different questions. And our first question, can you talk more about how we can get to center to even begin doing this work? I feel like we need to have a relationship with ourselves that is tapped into our truth enough to even begin. How can we give ourselves permission to do this work? What a beautiful, real question that
That's incredible.
that's a great question.
Yeah.
And we think about that question all the time, and we built some of that in to the book. We want to, through offering the book in some way to the best of our ability, open that door and give you permission. And even though the permission has to come from you, obviously, you have to give yourself permission, but we want to say that what your truth is critical to your own survival, to your own self-awareness, to your own progression in life, and you deserve a space that is sacred, that is your own, to really let that story out and try to work through it and get somewhere better. So, we can't give you permission, but we can support you giving yourself permission. And we can, through providing this symbolic object, sort of underscore how important it is to do this work. Lily, do you want to add to that?
Oh, just a couple things. One, that we understand that the idea can be daunting, that and the book is really designed with that in mind. Like literally the first page, I don't know if you can see it, but this is the first page right here. So that's one way of answering your question. Is like we are literally at every page cheering you along. We don't, I don't want to say hand holding in like an inappropriate way, but we really wrote this to, as much as we could, be able to give you the sense that we are holding your hand through this. The first introductory sections are ready, set, and go, because we want to equip you with the understanding of what it means to go through this. And so the initial pages of the book really talk you through what it means to do this kind of work. And then finally, we encourage you to, it is not something that necessarily needs to be done alone, nor should it necessarily be done alone. To seek out, support and guidance as you need. Maybe that means doing it with a deeply trusted friend or confidant. Maybe that means seeking the support of a therapist, a spiritual guide, your ancestors. There's no need to feel alone in the work.
Yes. And the next comment here is, there's a question in there, and I think this is going to be our last answer, because we don't have a lot of time. Though I do love this question from someone who's in Canada asking about the zoning and how 400 square feet home is nearly impossible. Is your home common in your area? I'm going to just venture that that's a no before I go to the other question. Is that a no? Can you just nod, or?
There's 2 homes on the property, and so that's how they pulled it off.
Okay.
But it's also 100 years old, so there's also that.
Okay, so I feel like that's a deeper question that we can't answer, but this note, that from Chris Bell, it's so in alignment with where my friends and I are finding ourselves, questioning the validity of the stories we've been told about what is possible. This is so key, I think. And Lily and I talk about this a lot. And I think it's so inextricably a part of white supremacy, a part of the culture that is so invested in the suppression of our imaginations and of our beliefs that we can change the story. Part of what this sort of hegemonic, domination that we're all living under has done is to create the sense that there are no other options, to create the illusion that we have free will, that we have so many choices, when in fact our choices are quite limited. And just the implanting of the notion that we have this infinite thing and that we are living in the best place in the world and that it is the most democratic place and it is it disables our own ability to think of a better way, a better story. And so I think so much of what's important right now, especially as this country is going through this incredible reckoning and necessary transformation, is to question our ideas about America, about what it means to be an American, about what it means to be a Black and brown person, about what it means to have white privilege, about what our stories have been, and whether or not they are true, whether or not they are valid, whether or not they need to be dispatched, and then to think very carefully about the new stories that we're going to put in place of those stories, because they are going to bear fruit in the same way that those old stories did. And we want to be thinking about the future. We want to be thinking about the story that we're writing for our children, for the next generation. So yes, I'm so glad. I think we are all in this, hopefully more of us than ever before are questioning this. And I want to really give George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter movement and everything, the real reckoning that we've been going through since that moment, the real credit that it's due, that it's really waking people up and asking them to consider things in a completely different way. So yes, what is possible, and we hope that the book can support you in thinking about that and imagining what is possible and then living it. Thank you for that comment.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much. That was fantastic. I feel like the discussion today with our authors, Rebecca Walker and Lily Diamond and Whitney Leigh Morris, who was an excellent example of the principles highlighted in the book, um, living kind of a sustainable, authentic life, personally as well as in conjunction with our communities. I think that's such an important message that seems to be resonating with people, especially in this last year, and will continue to do so. It should.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for this important discussion. I mean, to say that this was an appropriate discussion for the times we're in and going through, and in conjunction with the new year, the start of a new year, is an understatement. But I want to remind our audience that this event wasn't just about listening to Rebecca and Lily and Whitney. It's about the message of the book and how it can support you. And it's a very interactive type of book. It's a very proactive book that supports and encourages and inspires action in whatever form that may be for you. And so on that note, I want to remind people that we have plenty of the books at Book Passage. And although we are open for people to come in and buy the book and have instant physical gratification, we are available online for people all over the country to order the book as well. And I highly, highly, highly recommend it because, as they have mentioned and I have mentioned, it's an interactive book. It gets you thinking, it inspires, it asks the right questions for a transformative life. So once again, to our guests, thank you, all three of you.
Thank you so much for having us. And I
Yeah.
just want to make one more plug for Book Passage and just say, I really do hope all of you out there are able to buy the book from Book Passage. I will say that, you know, I'm now 25 years into writing. This is my 8th book. And if places, bookstores like Book Passage had not supported me from the very beginning, I would not be able to publish this book. This book would not exist. And so please do support them, because without them, you know, the future of publishing and the books that you will be able to hold in your hand would look very, very bleak. Okay, so please do that. Thank you again.
And we also have, I think we should have some book plates en route to you. So if people want signed copies,
Yes,
please get them directly from Book Passage.
yes.
And also Whitney's book, I'm sure that you all have it as well, Small Space Style, which is an extraordinary manual and exploration of everything that Whitney shared in this time, and so, so much more, and accompanies me constantly. So I've learned so much from it. So I hope that you can also explore Whitney's work as well.
Yeah, and she is very active on Instagram and has her own blog. And it's great. It's fun. I feel like I'm a little bit in your life and in your little house. So
It's a pleasure.
Yeah,
It's such a
follow us
pleasure.
all on Insta. We're all on Insta. We're all everywhere. We'd love to see you out in that world.
Yes.
Webs.
Well, thanks to our guests and thanks to our audience. Until our next event, everybody be well.
Thank you.